Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pioneer Webinar. I'm Sudeshna Sen, founder of Pioneer, a network that's built for women founders building game changing companies. So, welcome to today's interactive session. This is a space where, we learn, we ask, we share. So, drop in your questions in the chat as we go, and even feel free to ask them directly to Kristen, and we will answer as many as we can. But before we dive in, we'd love to hear more about you. So tell us in the chat what you're building, where you're from, and feel free to share your LinkedIn profile so others can connect with you. With that, let's get started. So today's conversation is tackling something which I believe all of us as founders, have to do all the time, which is sales. And sales can feel uncomfortable, especially in the early stages, because we spend so much time as founders building products, refining them. But when it comes time to sell it, we freeze. So today we have with us Kristin Sargent. She's the founder of Sargent Initiatives, who will talk to us about the art and science of sales. Really, how to turn these uncomfortable sales moments into confident conversations. And she'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies and real stories. So, we will be diving into two things: founder led sales and then team led sales. So, with that, welcome, Kristen. Let's start with you. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me so much. I love Pioneer. I love what you're building, and I'm grateful to be here. My name is Kristin Sargent. I started my career a long time ago as an Army Patriot missile officer. So I had a really interesting experience, just kind of learning what that meant, operating in obviously a very male-dominated environment, and really understanding sort of what was necessary to lead effectively. I went from that opportunity to leading cybersecurity programs at Booz Allen Hamilton, where I really could stay mission focused and feel still like I was serving, really driving different cybersecurity initiatives, but only from the industry side of the equation. And that's really where I've stayed for most of my career, is at that intersection of defense, security, and technology. I later worked in partnerships, ended up deciding, you know what, I've been a part of a big systems integrator for a long time. Let's go see what a big product company is like. And I moved into a sales position at Amazon Web Services, where I led a sizable portion of the public sector partner business. Again, staying close to the government, staying close to technology, and still feeling very much so like I was serving. I had an opportunity to join a startup. We were VC backed, and I'm sure I'll have stories to share about that experience. But ultimately, the VC backed startup I was a part of, even as well resourced as we were, as much talent as we had, could not successfully launch a product and really sell it at scale across the Defense Department. And so, with that, I launched Sargent Initiatives to help commercial software companies learn how to corporately build the foundations to sell and scale across the government. And so a lot of the experiences that I'll share today are going to come from both having been a seller, now leading my own company, and then also watching the struggles that a lot of companies go through at different stages and phases that they're in. So really excited about today's conversation.
What a fantastic experience you have, Kristen. And it's so sort of diverse, from startups to big corporations to, you as a founder. So
Yes, and
let's
I would say too, like I shared with you at the beginning, Sudeshna, uh, I don't necessarily identify as a seller. So I'll definitely share more about how I approach it in a way that feels more authentic to me and why that's important. And hopefully folks can relate to that.
That's fantastic. I think that will go a long way. So let's start with that question. So, as I hear, I'm sure all of us as founders, many founders talk that I talk to, they dread sales, especially in the beginning. They feel that sales is pushy, it's uncomfortable. So let's start, Kristen, by sharing, how you shifted your mindset to seeing sales as something uncomfortable to seeing it as something that you truly enjoy.
Yeah, so I've always been resistant to the term sales, to even taking on sales positions. I think primarily because I viewed sales as being primarily monetarily driven, almost like if someone's pushing you to buy something, it just doesn't feel good. And I didn't want to ever do that to other people. I wanted to treat others the way I want to be treated. And so, what really helped me shift my mindset and my approach to sales was I had a colleague once say, when you're in sales, you're really the doctor. And so, what that meant was, if every time you have a customer interaction, you kind of put it into the framework of a patient walking into a doctor's office, all you're now doing is really trying to elicit from that patient, what pain do they have? What problem do they have that they cannot solve? And then, am I the right doctor? Right? Is this number one the right fit? Am I the right person to help you? And if so, what do I recommend? Because I'm an expert in my area. What do I have to recommend to help you address that pain and help you address that problem? And so the second I got into that mode of remembering that when I'm in a sales conversation, I'm the doctor, I'm the expert in what it is that I'm representing in my company, in my product, in my services. Now it's my duty to help that patient if they are the right fit. And if they aren't the right fit, it is my duty to help them move on to whatever is going to help them solve their problem to the extent that I can help. And so that was really helpful for me since I've always been more oriented towards service. That made it feel like every sales conversation was now me being of service to the people I was talking to and less me trying to push something that they might not need or want.
That's such an interesting pivot. And I'm sure folks on the call can understand the pivot that Kristen is mentioning from selling to serving. And that totally changes the pressure that you feel inside. I love this analogy of a doctor and a patient, Kristen.
Well, and can you imagine a doctor who's just discovered the cure for cancer and doesn't want to sell? Like doesn't want to share what that is, why it's important and who it's appropriate for with the world, right? And so I feel like if all of us could look at what we're inventing as a part of our businesses as it being sort of on par with a cure for cancer, right? In whatever respective field you have, it's almost your duty to try to sell that.
100%. So let's build on that, Kristen. So let's start your journey as a as venturing into selling
Yep.
or serving. So let's talk about your first paying customer.
Mm.
Talk to us about what did that experience look like for you and any surprises or lessons you learned along the way.
I love this question so much. So my first sale it came from a direction, it was like a curveball that I could never have seen coming. And I think that's the number one thing I would say was most surprising is you can't control always where the sales come from. You have to kind of be prepared for how things might move and shift. But the way that my first sale came about is I founded my company and I immediately got out to to sell. And what I found was, as I was explaining what my company did and what my services were designed for, it was kind of like a child learning how to talk for the first time, right? The words that I was using were kind of like gibberish or like baby talk, but it took me having conversations with people for the market to actually tell me what it was that I was selling and what I was delivering and the words to use. And so by going out and having as many sales conversations as possible, I then don't have to do all the work. The market is actually doing the work for me as to what I'm selling, how I should position, right? Even how to price in some cases. And so that was really helpful is the more I had those conversations, the better my vernacular became and the more I began speaking the language that would resonate with the people and the customers that I was selling to. So that's number one. Start talking early because what you think your sales pitch is might not be what actually lands and resonates with your customers, and they will give you the feedback and help you self-adjust on that front. And then number two, you just don't know how dots will connect and what relationships or or different marketing mechanisms are really going to click. And so my first sale actually came from a friend of a friend who I had done business with and not much business with in a past life. I walked into a conference and there this acquaintance stood in front of me. He said, "Oh, I heard that you started your business. Remind me again what you do." I told him and he said, "Oh, come with me." And he took me by the elbow and marched me over and introduced me to a CEO. He looked at the CEO and he had already had a working relationship with them. And he said, "You need to work with Kristin." And that was it. That's how the first sale began. And I closed it rather rapidly and we were off to the races from there. But it was shocking to me that that was the contact that led to my first sale in the environment that I was in. And so a lot of it is trial and error and just kind of going with the flow. But the more reps and iterations I got in, the better I got.
That's such an fantastic insight, Christian, that there is no one pathway. And
No,
at times when you try to sort of I don't know, over course correct, it actually harms you. So go with the flow and learn as you go and listen to your customers. And that leads me to my next question. Like after these first wins that you had, how did you turn these random successes or this serendipity in this case into a predictable system? So can you
yeah.
walk us through some simple routines or rules that worked for you?
So first of all, I think it's really important to note what felt like a random sale in the beginning and what felt like a repeatable sale in the beginning ended up not being, right? The repeatable sale was actually random and the random sale was actually repeatable. So you really kind of don't know where your sales land on that spectrum until you've got a lot more history and a lot more reps under your belt. And so in that regard, I think kind of holding on loosely is the way to go in approaching sales. But the way that I approached selling was to just plain make it a disciplined rhythm, right? I did not worry or get too connected to any one sale or any one customer, and that kept me in the game. And what I mean by that is my CRM system, every time I reached out to someone, I logged it. If they didn't respond, I didn't worry about it. And then the next week, I would go right back at it. And I just used a framework of how would I want to be treated, right? Do I want to receive an email every single day from someone? Or do I want to receive an email once a week? When I receive that email, do I want that email to be filled with useful information? Or do I want that email to be asking me when I'm available for the next phone call? Or could I respond with when I'm going to sign the contract? Right. And so again, just applying that mentality of I want to treat others the way I want to be treated. I just kept at it and I kept uh, responding and following up with customers such that I was always giving them information or input that I thought would help them and would be of service to them. And in that way, I never felt like I was selling. So that was number one. Number two, I did the things that I like to do, right? I like meeting with people. I prefer in person. So I prioritized conferences, speaking engagements, things like that, where I could be with people. And that made a big difference because that put more fuel into my tank. So I think finding something that feels organic to yourself is a real key here too. And then third, I treat lead generation, my company treats lead generation just as a priority meeting as any customer meeting. And so carving out dedicated time, 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week, right? Find the right balance, but making it a priority and doing it religiously and on a regular cadence, that's really what's going to net you the most results. It's not rocket science. It's literally just consistency, repetition, and discipline that ultimately is going to pay off and provide the results you're looking for.
That's such an incredible insight, Christian. As you said, it's consistency and
Yep.
treating these leads as you would like to be treated, which I think we often forget the human angle in when we are selling. Any questions from the audience before we go any further? Feel free to drop in the chat or unmute yourself to ask Kristen directly. Okay. I'll keep going, but feel free to interject us as you think of any questions, any challenges you are facing as you are, in the sales motions. So let's talk about customers, Kristen. So, big part of sales, to your point, is understanding the leads, understanding your potential customers, and understanding them can feel tricky. So, talk to us a little bit about, how did you learn their language, what they value, what they actually are willing to pay for?
So I treat every customer as if talking to them is learning a new foreign language. And I do this because myself personally, I had the opportunity to live abroad in Nepal a long time ago. And I learned enough Nepali to be dangerous. But I use the exact same techniques that I used trying to converse in Nepali when I was learning the language with customers. And so what that looks like is I slow the conversation way down. I literally say to customers, if they are really fast talkers, I literally pause them and I say, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I need you to slow way down so that I can better understand what you're describing. And it, right, they're happy because now they understand, like, I'm really trying to get it. And then I often say, wait, you just used the word, software. How are you using that word in the context you're using it right now? And I never take for granted that I understand the way in which they're using a certain term because every organization has a different meaning for it, and every organization has there's a different context to it. And I learned that early in my career when I was working partnerships. We were doing work in OT, and the way my company defined it was completely different than how the other company defined it. And how each company was defining it determined which business unit you were working with and which business unit had the funding that you needed. And so you really have to not take anything for granted and just slow the conversation down. And so I find that keeping that in the back of your mind that, okay, every person I talk to, I'm learning a new language today as I talk to them. It really helps them feel like you are genuinely learning and listening to them. And that builds the trust that I think ultimately leads to really long-term success in sales and in general. And so that to me, that mentality and that approach has been really beneficial. And I think it helps people, especially in this day and age when there's so much coming at us. The opportunity to slow a conversation down and really get to the root really makes a big difference. And then because you're building that trust, the intimacy can come. And now you're able to really get in-depth insights into the politics that might be holding up your sale, the budget limitations that might be holding up the sale, that someone might otherwise feel a little resistant to sharing.
But that's such an excellent point. Like slowing the conversation. I think all of us, mostly like founders, are in such a rush to close that I don't think we think about slowing a conversation, and therefore we don't. I think we miss what could be possible in terms of really understanding what the customer wants and being able to close. So it's sort of a catch-22 in some respects. If you don't slow the conversation, likelihood of closing the sale is less, but we are just in a rush all the
Yep.
time.
Yep. You've got
But
to go slow to go fast, though. Got
gotta
to.
go. I'd love
Yep.
to hear from some founders on the call. Like, how has your sales experience been? Do you face similar challenges as we are talking about in terms of, closing sales? Anyone?
Hi,
I-
this is Alyssa. Yeah, I think it's important to share the value proposition and do you find this as well, that it's important to share the value proposition and really hopefully communicate it in a way that the people understand the value.
Oh, absolutely. The reason I like to use the approach that every customer is speaking a foreign language to me is I'm in those first couple minutes of any conversation trying to learn the language that they use and then immediately translate my value proposition into the words they're using and into the language they use. So I never communicate the value proposition for my company in the same way across all my customers. Every customer gets it translated into their language so that it's on their terms in their way, even though I'm selling the same thing over and over again.
Right.
Um, but that makes everyone wants to feel heard and feel like you understand their problem and that you're solving it. And so I don't know of a better way to do it other than to translate it into their language.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Thank you.
It's a great point. So let's talk about one of the factor that I think is the most stressful for most founders, which is pricing. Huge
Mm.
stress point. So, Kristen, how do you build the confidence to charge what you're worth or what your product is worth or your service is worth? Like, how do you know, how do you build it, and then how do you know when it's the right time to raise the price?
Yeah, I mean, pricing, I love this pricing conversation. I actually think we're all way too sensitive about this. Like way too sensitive. Why? Because pricing can always be changed. And so the way I think about it is similar to, right, I look at how I purchase things in my own private life. And I know, for example, that when I spend a lot more on a purse, right? If it's a luxury brand handbag, and then I compare it to my Target handbag, I know I love my luxury bag a lot more. Um, and it costs that much more. So it's if there's something about I actually like the things I spend more money on more. And so if you can kind of use that as a loose framework of like, okay, I like spending, if I like the thing that I spend more money on, I value it more. That's why I spent more money on it. What gave it that value? And then what are the competing items on the spectrum? And sort of where do they fall on that value spectrum and price spectrum? And so then what I think founders need to do is take their offering and do the best you can, recognizing that you don't have to get it right, but do the best you can to price your product or your service on the spectrum of luxury to commodity, and then let it ride. And if too many customers buy it, then you're probably too low. If no one buys it, you might be too high, but maybe it's your value proposition that's off, or maybe the branding doesn't match, or there's some confusion, right? So I think you've got to let the market tell you what your price is. And the faster you can get something out to market, the better off you'll be. I loved, one of the things that I like to do is I like to pick some subset of loyal customers and say, hey, I want to give you this new offering. I'm going to give it to you, right? This is all I want is your feedback on it. And if you give your product to 5 to 10 customers, or you give your service to five or 10 customers, and then you ask them, how much would you have paid for this? What are the competing products or services that you would otherwise consider in relation to this? What was the unique value proposition? They'll tell you. I think customers, the market loves to tell businesses what they should be charging, what the value was, where the problems were. And so I actually think instead of worrying so much about pricing, you've got to worry more about speed to market and getting that price out the door to let the market kind of tell you where you should rest. And candidly, I keep raising my prices until the customers I don't want can't afford it and the customers I do want can. And so I use pricing as really a sorting mechanism for who I want to work with. And in that way, it's really right. Not everyone should or can buy a luxury handbag, but a certain customer can, And so I just kind of keep those types of simple buying patterns that we see in that we have in our regular daily lives in mind as I go out and consider how to price my services or my products.
That's such an incredible insight. Thinking of pricing very differently and constantly testing it and not being scared to put it out there. Because as you said, let the market tell you
Yeah.
what's the right price point they're willing to pay.
Yep.
So on that note, Christian, I want to switch gears a little bit from founder-led to team-led. I see a few founders here that have sales teams, and many founders have, they don't have sales teams. But I think all of us transition from founder-led sales to team-led sales at some point.
Yep.
So my question, a two-part question is, at what point, you know, um, does a founder move from founder-led to a team-led? And as founders are transitioning, what are some of the things that they need to be watching out for?
Yeah, I mean, so there, I really think that any successful company hits kind of this moment in their trajectory where they go from casting a line constantly to catch the fish to actually feeling like fish are jumping in the boat, right? And that to me is when, right, you're getting inundated with customer requests for meetings, you're getting inundated with lead gen. When those types of things start to happen, to me, that's the right time to hire a seller. Now, compounding or along with that, you have to have product and services that are ready to scale to the extent that the demand is there. And so just know that you're kind of walking this fine line between having true product market fit and being really kind of ahead of maybe of what your product can deliver on. You want to be really, really honest about what you can or cannot deliver on as you bring in a seller. And here's why. A seller takes, they are the front line of customer interaction, and they take their integrity very seriously, and they need to be able to deliver on whatever you're asking them to sell. And so, and they're very aggressive normally, right? Most sellers have a really aggressive nature to them. And so when you put all of that together, you can you can create magic when you've got a product that's ready to be sold, a seller that has a healthy lead generation mechanism behind them and plenty of places to go collect fish, and then you're properly incentivizing them in the direction you want them to sell and at the rate that you want them to sell. So it's a real balancing act. But I think it's very dangerous to hire sellers ahead of having a product that's ready to go and ahead of having lead generation and ample places for that seller to really churn on that customer demand that's already inbound.
Yes, I think as you mentioned, Christian, it's just knowing the right time to start hiring the team is very important. I've seen founders make mistakes by hiring too early or hiring the wrong people.
Yep.
And then, it doesn't help. We have a question from the audience, Christian, for you. So, hi, Christian. This is from Rashida. When reaching out to potential clients, how do you build trust in the first conversation for them to know you are the go-to person to solve their particular problem?
Yeah, I don't ask I ask them about themselves, but I always offer content that is specific to them and helpful to them and related to the services that I offer. So, right, I mean, I'm sure all of us are getting these very vanilla LinkedIn connections and requests and, sales garbage. Um, I try to stand out from that by really being personal and then offering them something that's truly of assistance for them in building their business that they might not be considering based on my expertise and what my company does. And I leave it alone, right? And I'll do that two or three times before ever asking to meet, right? Asking to meet, that's a tall order. And I do sort of look at this like dating. Not to overshare, but I was divorced in my mid 30s. I had to use the apps to find my fabulous partner now, but it's very similar, right? I don't my time is very precious. I don't want to go out on a date before I know something about you or I see that you offer something that's interesting. And so, I kind of look at it in the same way of just making sure that the content and the way in which you're communicating is always putting that customer first. And I think that's going to pay dividends long term.
That is a great insight. Rashida, feel free to unmute yourself.
I know, Rashida, hopefully that answered your question.
I do have another question.
Okay, go for it, Maria.
So one thing is when you can actually meet the customer in person.
Yep.
What about when your only way of selling it's online?
Yep.
And how would you connect with these people and what little tips you may have that could work for being, I mean, everybody's now trying to do advertisement through social media,
Yep.
but sometimes that is becoming a scam slowly but surely.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend to connect with these people online, I
Well,
guess?
let me ask you, Maria, are you doing mass marketing or are you trying to outreach to people individually? What kind of approach are you taking?
So I'm trying to sell specifically myself to daycare owners, like
Okay.
daycare and childhood education programs to acquire my program. So it's a Spanish program that teaches children the language through music, but I have a digital platform and it has books that mirror the digital platform. And so I'm trying to connect with these business owners and I need to figure out how to spread the sales not only to where I live, but all over the country. And sometimes it's really hard through an email, like we were talking earlier, like
Yep.
you were talking earlier. And so that's kind of where I am. Like, I don't know how to get to them and connect a little bit if it's not an email or social media
So if
fandom.
so if you were in their shoes, what would grab your attention?
Um, so what I've known from the past is that a lot of schools out there are looking for a program, right? That they
Mhm.
can introduce into their business, but they don't know how to find it or where to find it. Sometimes economical, the budget is not there either. And so I've been trying to focus in like how can I support the school
Mhm.
in like, okay, if you acquire my program, how can I help you to actually make it work for you? So if they need extra material or extra help with how they they utilize the program, I would be right there
Yep.
for them to kind of help them make it better.
So, okay, first of all, thank you for what you're doing. It sounds absolutely amazing. I love it so
Thank
much. So congrats there. Keep going. So what I'm hearing you say is there are a bunch of different key stakeholders in your sales process. So one is, say, the buyer, that might be the daycare owner who has nothing to do with the daily programming. And what they care about probably is um, allocating money and budgeting funds towards programming that increases their enrollment rate, right? So you want to target what your value proposition, what you're selling, what in those terms to that key stakeholder. Then you've got the daycare, maybe the daycare operator, right? The head person in charge of the daycare. What they care about, what their biggest problem is um, maybe uh, having standard programming that's easy given any attrition that they have across the daycare providers that they're managing and the staff that they have coming in. And so you would want to tailor your value proposition to them about how what you're offering kind of solves that problem. But then I think a really powerful stakeholder in that chain are the parents. And so I would be really going after the parent demographic and saying, look, there's an easy way to immerse your kids in Spanish education. It needs to start early on. And so have you considered something like this? Is your daycare running programming like this and featuring your programming? And so kind of not using blank, I think this is where everyone is going wrong these days, is everyone's using like a blanket marketing statement, but just in parsing out like the differences of who you're trying to approach because of all the different key stakeholders in your value proposition and your sales life cycle. um, I would kind of look at, okay, who are the key personas that you really need to attack? And also, you might have to use different social media platforms to reach all of them because the daycare owner might be on LinkedIn, but not paying any attention to Facebook, whereas the parents have a Facebook community or are on Instagram, right? So you really just want to work backwards from the actual stakeholders that you're trying to approach with your specific messaging. And then I think all of the same principles that I'm talking about still apply. Just treat them the way you want to be communicated to and make sure that the messaging is in service to them and helps them solve their problem. Does that help?
Yeah, actually, the way that you said about like uh, where they actually are located kind of opened a little bit my mind in how to attack it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
think because I feel for you because I hear what you're saying in terms of needing to get your messaging out and there being a little bit more, shall we call it, distance between you and your target customers. And so you're having to kind of use social media or, use online methods a lot more heavily. Um, but I think what will set you apart is the more you can kind of segment who those key audiences are, and then always work backwards from where they are and where they would hear the message that you're delivering in order to take the action that you need to take. And I think the more thought you can put into it, the more targeted you can get. I'm confident you will see more results.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, of course. I love what you're doing. Happy to have
Thanks.
provided 45 seconds of help.
Oh my God. I
It's
mean,
incredible.
it opens your mind a little bit of you're used to in the past I used to do it in person, the
Hmm.
whole program. Of course, I wanted to grow somehow, make it more scalable.
Yep.
And before was like, okay, send an email saying who I am, what I'm doing, very short, easy to read. And then I would be like, do you have 20 minutes? Or I would call them and say, I'll be there in half an hour. Can I leave a flyer, a folder or something? They see me, they see me drop in the folder, and then I say, have a demo class for free. And then I will go and do the sale. But now I'm trying to scale online, and it's been extremely um, wild. Like I feel
Yeah.
that I need like a marketing company to create all these um, things that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and I'm like, why can I do it a certain way that it could be um, more organic, more easy, like more personal? But it's hard to be personal online,
It's
I
very hard to be
feel.
personal online. It's funny though. I kind of think what's old becomes new again. And so I've been leaning on handwritten notes more. And so what if you found the director of, say, 5 target daycares and wrote 5 handwritten notes to them? And just to introduce
Interesting.
yourself as a resource, um, left some basic information and see what that did. Um, I I think I know I open every handwritten note that comes to my door. All
Interesting.
the printed
Okay.
stuff goes. I delete every email that I don't know the sender right now, right? And so I would just open the aperture to like, what do you pay attention to, and then go that route. But I think that old ways of marketing could become new again because we're all getting a little inundated by the social media and
We want
other
something more
mechanisms.
personal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
it's a great insight. We crave that. It's the old is becoming new.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing your story, Maria. That's so inspiring, and I hope the insights Kristen shared will sort of shape your strategy forward. Anyone else? I think this is a great way to sort of dive into the sales challenges you're facing. Anyone else wants to talk about the sales challenges or anything, or what's working for you, what's not working with this group? So Alyssa, Olivia, Caitlin, Ayushi, don't want to put you on the spot, but anyone, feel free to weigh in.
What about driving awareness from a marketing perspective?
Mm. What aspect in particular, Alyssa?
Uh, just all the things. I guess we can have another conversation on that separately. I think it's a large topic.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I always find remarkable is a lot of people are so desperate to say what they have to say
Mhm.
and to push their message. And the real question we should all be asking is, who is it that we want to reach, and what action do we want that person to take? And if you work backwards from the action that you want that person to take, and you reverse engineer what that mode of communication needs to be, I think a lot of time you'll get a very different result than what we spend the most of our time doing.
Hmm.
And so um, I loved when I was at AWS. I mean, we were so spoiled, right? As an individual or as a team seller with my team, we had all types of resources at our disposal. But I knew, like, if there was an older white ex-military gentleman that we had to approach and we had to win the sale with, I had it hands down, right? Like, that was my target demographic. I knew I was the right vessel for that message. We were going to close that sale. But I was never above knowing when I was not the right fit. And so, you know, just we're human and we all hear and comprehend information differently. And so I really think reverse engineering back from who you're trying to reach and the action that you want them to take, that's really the starting point. And then I think it becomes more obvious what marketing mechanism or message you need to shape from there. So hopefully that helps kind of
Yeah,
address the framework I try to apply with marketing in general.
yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Of course. And I'll share a story, Sudeshna, because I think it's relevant, especially to us women. So I had a deal. Uh, I had been introduced to the CEO of a company. He was great. He and I clicked. He was former military. You know, we just had a lot in common. I really enjoyed his company, and I was really excited about doing work with him and his team and his company. And this is in maybe August of 2024. Um, he said, "Yep, send me a proposal. Just send me what you think we should do, and I'll sign it, and we'll get to work." And so I put together a proposal. I sent it to him. Didn't hear back. Sent him a note a week later. Hey, wanted to get your thoughts. Didn't hear back. Sent him a note a week later. Hey, was thinking about you, was thinking about timing of this piece of work and how if we push this too far right, it might not be beneficial. Didn't hear back. This happened through September, October, November, December. And I was ready to say, screw it. I'm never working for this company. I'm not working with this client ever again. I don't like this is so rude. This is absolutely inappropriate. This is unprofessional. And a sales coach I was working with at the time said, Always give them the benefit of the doubt. And so the new year turned over and I sent him a note and I just said, hey, Happy New Year. Hope the holidays were great. I was wondering if our working together was still a priority for you. And he immediately responded and said, absolutely. Let's have a phone call. My company was going through a reorganization, and because we're publicly traded, I couldn't share that information with you um, because it would have violated, you know, Wall Street's rules, basically. And I had no idea, right? I had no idea that the questions I was asking or where my work sat with this CEO was affected by the type of reorg that would had to be handled so privately. And so that was a lesson for me in being patient, giving my customers the benefit of the doubt, and also believing that no kind of never really means no. It just might mean not now or it's not the right fit. But no doesn't quite always mean no. And to not get too upset or emotionally hurt by what you imagine is happening on the other side. So anyway, I share that because I'm guessing others have been in similar situations. And I think it's just really important to stay even keeled and not ascribe a meaning to something that might not be the case.
No, that's such a great insight. No doesn't mean no.
Nope.
Caitlin, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I have a question. Kristen, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much so far. Quick question about pricing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that if you're getting all yeses, you should probably increase your price.
Yep.
So, or majority yeses. So from your perspective, your point of view, what percentage of no's maybe is healthy that you should be getting? For when then like the price, and then maybe what percentage increases should you do at any given point in time?
Ooh, those are great
So
questions.
two questions.
Yeah, those are great questions. I mean, so it's really hard for me to say what percentage no is the right amount. I look at it more of are the no's coming from the right category, right? So in my case, I raised my prices and Series A and B startups started falling off my customer list, and I was good with that. I just realized that my services were better suited towards more mature companies. And so I wouldn't look at it so much as of what portion should fall off, so much as it's the right type is kind of falling by the wayside and allowing you to focus more on the ideal customer. So that's
Okay.
one thing. I would say if you're looking to increase your prices, do it just by 10% and just see what happens. I think
Okay.
10% is really reasonable. Um, Mentally, if you want to kind of make it more palatable, you could do it like 7 or 8%, right? For some reason, that feels a lot less than 10%, even though it's not. But I would just do a 10% increase and let the market talk, right? And what I mean by that is if you lose 5% of your customers, but your revenue increases by a large amount, is that a loss? No. And
Mm-mm.
so just pay attention to your top line revenue when you do your price increase against the number of customers you lose. And if it's too many, like you can go back.
Mhm.
And so I would do it just in a small increment, see what happens. And if nothing happens, if you lose no customers, maybe in six
You
months
got
you
your
do
new
another
price.
10%. Yeah, just keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean,
Okay.
I read a case study not that long ago. An online education company got bought. The new owner increased prices by 200%, and they only lost 4% of customers. So think of that revenue jump.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more about, and it was just because it was so severely underpriced compared to the market. So the market will bear out what you should be charging. Do you have a sense of your competitors' prices?
Yeah, yeah,
Are you
yeah.
how are you in the ballpark of them? Higher, lower?
Uh, I would say slightly higher or
Okay.
in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Ballpark to higher. Yes.
Yeah, I find too many women
Okay.
entrepreneurs are like way below their competitors. It's like, what are we doing? No, up.
Mm,
No, I would just do a 10% increase and see what happens.
okay.
How does
All
that
right.
feel?
Thank you.
How does that feel, Caitlin?
Uh, I've heard 10% before, so because of the volume of, of like of the times that I've heard 10%, I'm like, okay, all right, Kristen's given me the confidence. I'm gonna do 10%. Got it.
It's
Yeah, I'll do
nerve-wracking
10%.
though. It feels
But
nerve-wracking,
it's
doesn't it?
scary, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing I've definitely learned in business is like nothing is permanent. You can always make a change. So just think about now and this season, this month, and you can always change next month. So yeah.
Yeah, didn't
Okay.
Disney streaming just go from like $9 to $16 or something?
They did.
I mean, I didn't cancel.
Right.
Think about
So,
Amazon Prime, same thing. It went even like 20, $30 up.
yeah.
Most people didn't cancel. So there's that. So time for one more
Okay.
question.
Thanks.
Anyone else before I ask my final question?
Yeah,
Any
good
other?
luck, Caitlin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. So looking back then, Kristen, what would you say, what are some of the early mistakes you would want founders to avoid in sale? Given that you've yourself made it, you've seen others make it, what can we avoid? What can we be more mindful of?
Um, I think the main thing to be mindful of is consistency is really what wins. So just sticking with it. Now, when I say sticking with it, what I mean is whatever feels authentic to you, right? There are so many different modes of lead generation and of selling. And so find something that feels authentic to you, that you actually like doing, or at least don't mind doing, and make that be what you are leaning in on, right? I love talking in forums like this. I love doing podcasts. I love being at conferences. So those are the things I lean in on for lead generation. I think, and of course, it's all relative to how to reach your customers. Those forums work for my customers. So find what works for you and for reaching your customers. And then just remember you're the doctor. You're the doctor. You are the expert in what you sell, and what you sell is helping others. And so doing so is being in service to those others. So be authentic, find your mode, stick with it. Consistency always wins, and always be the doctor.
That's such an excellent insight. One follow-up question, I think, on this, Kristen, is that as opposed to be a doctor, when we are selling or serving, we get a lot of no's, and that's what scares us because what if they say no? So how do you handle that rejection? How do you sort of manage it better to be better at this?
That's such a great question. No's are the best, though, ladies. I mean, I love a good no. I always learn with a no. And I just don't think a no is a no. It's not personal. I just think a no is a not now, or I don't have the money, or it's not a fit. It's the same as a patient saying, like, no, this isn't for me right now. Does a doctor worry about it? No, they move on to the next patient. So, I think for me, no's are just opportunities to learn, and it's another data point for me to fine tune my business and better improve my customers' experience and better target the right customers, and just keep moving. So I kind of view that as no's are just we've got to get great at accepting them. And I honestly, I kind of don't feel any different from a no than I do a yes at this point. Because I've just learned that it's all relative. Like it's all learning, it's all good.
That's, Alyssa, do you want to go? Yeah, go for it.
All right, I have a question about the nose. So I'm working I'm working in HubSpot to move people through this
Yep.
funnel.
Yep.
And how do you know, and with HubSpot, and I know this is a very particular question, but you have to move people out of marketing contexts or keep them in marketing contexts. And how do you know when a no really is a no versus a no is a not now?
Um, can you give me a little bit more on like what what is the trigger right now for you to move them today? Or like where are you like, "Ah, I'm not sure."
Well, I think when they say no, and I don't come back to them and say, is that a no or is that just a not now?
So, I mean, there's this is definitely more an art, and the way I generally do it is if someone gives me a no, they kind of go into my keep in touch category.
Okay.
And so my keep in touch category is, hey, I was thinking, just wanted to send you this content. This came to mind, and I thought it was helpful based on a conversation we had, right?
Okay.
Or so now I'm not selling to you, but
Right.
I'm staying in contact with you so that if anything does change on your side, you're at least getting an email from me or you're at least getting a contact from me that you then have an easy re-entry point.
Right. 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 Okay. Okay.
Right. And so I would kind of look at your nose from a marketing content as all right, no for now, but let's keep in touch.
Right. 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 Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I like, Kristen, how you're humanizing all of these. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. Just to close out the conversation is that we look at sales very transactionally, but you are looking at it from a very human angle,
Yeah.
treating others right, treating others like you want to be treated, treat no as keep in touch. And I think that mindset shift and the way you look at things definitely impacts how you reach out to your potential customers. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. And really thank you, Christian, for all these wonderful insights that you shared with us. And I mean, I learned a ton. And I'm sure all of everyone here took away a lot from this. So thank you again for joining. We'll follow up with a recording. And if you'd like to have more conversations like this, I'd love to invite you to join Pioneer, where we as women founders dive deep into these conversations. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, ladies. Good luck.
Thanks.